Alright, so I got this Vanquish servo horn. Honestly, this stock Spectrum one from the V2 is not going to work with the Servo. Servo. So this is $15.99, also from Hobbytown. This is going to be the VP-S02410, and this is a 25 to 24 millimeter horn. So it is beautiful, 25 to 24 millimeter. It does come with two 1.5 mils to also clamp on here. So I did say I wanted to try to stay as stock as possible, but that stock horn was not working. So on this Vanquish horn, does come with its own bolts. And this is going to be a 1.5 mil. So you don't want to go extremely hard and use a drill on it. It is one of those bolts that you would get away with doing it by hand. You don't need high torque on it. So just thread it in by hand so you don't cross thread it. It is aluminum. The same thing for this. What I normally do is I tighten it. It's tight now. And then back off 4 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take our stock bolt. Just put that in. That is a little too far off, so what I'm going to do is try to test fit this. That would work, but we're going to run into just kind of exposing that wire, so I'm going to just run it to its stock location. So that would be where our servo wants to be. Once we power this on, it is going to kind of move around. So let's try to power it on and then go from there on adjusting the front end. So here we have servo in. Not going to do the adjustment on that just yet. And here we have the Fatuba R334 SBS. So this is S for surface. So just keep that in mind. This is a 4 channels TFHS 2.4 gigahertz super response. It does operate at 3.7 volts to 4.7 volts. Don't go past that. 7.4 volts. Sorry about that. Not 4.7 to 7.4 volts. So if we put that in there, our antenna will come out right here. And we're going to need dual lock. Alright, what I'm using is just Scotch. It's made with 3M. And what it's going to hold is 10 pounds. And what it is almost like a Velcro. It's just Velcro has fabric on one side. This actually has little elbows that lock into each other left and right. So it's going to hold your force left and right. Versus Velcro that would go in one direction. This can go this way and that way. And the way this works is just like double-sided sticky tape. So that's in there pretty firm. I know what channels it's going to go on, but just to show you what channels it's going to go on the manual, when you open it up, it's going to pretty much give you a description on SR mode, which is if you're using a super response servo, or SR mode on and off, telemetry functions, mode change. We're not going to be using none of that. What we do have is a channel 1, a channel 2, 3, 4, and the S bus. S bus is going to go if I'm running a temp sensor, RPM sensor, voltage sensor. We're not running none of those. So then we go to channel 1, which is to our steering servo. And then we go to channel 2, which is going to be to our throttle. And then channel 4, if we run a battery, to power this. But we're not going to run a battery to power this. We're going to use the Xlx2. It does have an external back or internal back to power this receiver. So if we're going off of our steering servo, that is going to go to channel 1. So if that's going to go to channel 1, that's going to go to 1. Skip S bus to channel 1. And there we go. So your channel 1 is going to be steering, and channel 2 is going to be your throttle. And one thing I would say with the Fatuba system is don't mess with this antenna. This antenna is pretty long. So yeah, don't mess with this one. I do have a few other antennas by Fatuba that would be compatible with the 7PXRs. This one is going to be a R210 6GF. Also have this one, which is a R2006GS. And the S is for surface, the F is for flying. We are not using those ones right now, so this is extremely long antenna. Don't really recall using an antenna this long. think I was using a 334 BS. Let me check. This is a dual motor I was working on. I got to get back to this one, but yeah, I was using a 20 actually, 2006 GS. So this is a 8S, 8S, and we got the 17 motors on here. 1717. I got to get back to this one. This one is heavy. But if you do run a long antenna on this, you are going to run into an issue. You're going to need this antenna to have a tubing. So you do need to pick up a nitro tubing or antenna tubing. Pretty much what this is going to do, it's going to go into one of these holes. Pretty much you will run that down, run this into here. And then you'll expose your antenna through the end of this, so that way you have your 2.4 gigahertz reception. You don't want to cut this wire, you don't want to try to extend. This is what gives that 2.4 gigahertz feedback, is this antenna wavelength that's on the end. So don't mess with that material, keep it where it's at. So that's where our servo is going to go. Next we'll have our throttle input from the Castle ESC. So we do have this white wire, we're not going to use that, and the switch, we can honestly shorten all of this up. So take all this wire out, disconnect that fan. So what I'm going to do is remove this aux wire. I'm not going to use that. So all you got to do is pull up on this little tab right here that's going to release this aux wire. Once you release that aux wire, you'll be able to pull this tab and then pull that wire out. There we go. And I'm not using this aux wire. I'm not going to be trying to change on the fly, tuning, response, anything like that. So that's one thing we'll trim. If we want, we can shorten this switch up. So if we went from here around to here, we're going to run that switch on that box. So we'll leave that one for now. But yeah, we'll remove a lot of this wiring by just disconnecting it. So we'll have our white, our brown, and then our orange. So we'll remove all of that wire, and then we'll reroute a lot of this. I do have a wire that I was using from another ESC, so this will go on to here. If we route this through this box, then it has to go through here. Let's try to route it through here on the inside. So if we routed that through there, came down here, and then came up right here, we're dealing with It's going to be a pretty tough wire right there. So if we went down there and came back up, then this is going to go right about here. So let's cut that wire. And what we're going to do on this one is remove the white pull up on this tab, because we're not using that. Pull back. And we got the aux wire removed. So this is going to be about the same amount of wire we'll use for this one. If we ran this from here through there through here, how much are we dealing with? About the same amount for our input power. So let's keep that right there. And I don't think we're going to rerun in the center wire unless I run the 1721. So what you want to do is pull this wire back. Alright, so when you get an Xlx2, you get a bunch of these wires. It is good that Castle gives you all this wire so you can customize it. If you don't need it, zip tie it, get it out the way. But honestly, we're just going to tidy it up just a bit. This does come stock with the Xlx2. You get a sense wire, you get all your back wires, you get your throttle input wires, your battery wires, which is 8 gauge if you need to extend them. But what we're going to do is take all this wire, which is almost the length of a whole Xlx2, and turn it into half a length of an Xlx, or Arrma Limitless. So we're going to pretty much take this wire, I already pre-measured it. It's going to go down there and then come back up right here. So if we plug that in, and we take our other wire and plug that in, this is going to go down there, and then come up right here. So what we're going to do right now is take this wire that we have, that is going to be a bare wire, pretty much, and turn it into this. So let's trim that up a little bit. I've already gone ahead and installed these ends. And you can get this Crimpers set. It's off of Amazon. It's made by a company called Swiss. So I'm going to stagger this because we are stretching our wire just a tad bit. So now that I got that off, we're going to take some wire strippers of your choice. You want to twist these wires just so you can kind of get a good connection. And this kit, it comes with extra wires, which I'm not using. It comes with male terminals and female terminals. It comes with male connectors and female connectors. All we're after today is a female connector. We're going to need 3 of those since I've already used 2 of them for the other 2 wires. Just go like that, break that one off. Do the same thing on that. Adjust that just a tad bit. And we're going to do the same thing on this. So one thing to keep in mind is you do want to see which way your wires are facing. So our faces are facing up. I've already gone ahead and cut that. So if we were just to follow this, our wires are going to be going down. So that means if we're going down like that, we have to make sure on this connector you have this opening on the top that's going to accept your wire. Next, what we're going to do is take our connector and we're going to pretty much compress it into these pliers that's going to then crimp this setup. Flip it over. And there you have that wire. So one thing to keep in mind is if this is going to be face up for this wire connector, this one's going to be face down. So this one's pretty much face up. You go down here, this one should be face down. So just a rule of thumb. We're going to be crimping these. You will pretty much put the face of this in here, and then as you can see that opening right there, maybe you can't see it, but there's a spike that will be up that's going to crimp around. The wires are going to be facing away from you. And don't go and try to do this first try. Do practice. Practice makes perfect. You're not going to be able to just say, hey, this is my first time doing this. Go and buy this kit and crimp these wires, and it's going to be legit. Velo. As you can tell, it's a little bit finicky if you're doing it with one hand. Third one's going to be the charm. Where did I do with that? So we have our opening right here. We're going to face that away from us, put that around the wire. That one's a tad bit too long, so let's go ahead and cut that. So we got our prongs facing away from us. What I normally do is I kind of squeeze that. Since I'm doing it on camera, it's a little bit harder, but I squeeze that so it can kind of hug the wire. Then what I do is I put it inside. And there you go. Now that I got those wires pretty much crimped, we're dealing with what's going to go into your ESC, and we're dealing with what's going to go into your receiver. So let's do it one wire by one wire. So if you take your castle connector, what you're trying to do is get under this pin, and you want to kind of push on it a little bit. And then pull. So that one's still stuck a little bit, so let's pull that out. So we got that one out, so let's get the wire that we shortened in. So you do have an opening that's going to accept it. And that one's a little bit too wide, so let's kind of close that up. So with wiring, you want to push pull. And get that wire to lock. Main thing is this tab is going to be our release. So we're going to release that one, which is going to be our orange, and then our brown. So let's get that out. Then you want to push to relieve tension. So now we got our factory wiring out. So we go yellow, then our orange, then our brown. So we got brown, yellow, or brown, orange, yellow. Next, we're going to put our brown wire in next to that. Take our 90. We're going to take our brown out and our orange out again. Then we're deleting our white for our aux since we're not using an auxiliary input to change tunes, mapping for gas cards, stuff like that. So our brown comes out. So there we deleted a lot of that wire. We're going to put our brown wire in that we shortened already. And you can kind of see on this wire, it has like the barrel that wraps around like arms. That's going to pretty much be facing up, so keep that in mind. So we have our wires a little bit shorter. I did do this wire a little bit longer than that one since one has to kind of travel a little bit longer. One plugs in and one goes over. So that part is pretty straightforward. If this was to go into here, one thing I would normally do is solder this red and black together so we can delete the switch. But we'll just tuck this one down into this position right here. And we'll have our on and off switch right there. If we wanted to, we can tuck that, yeah, underneath. So let's get some 3M dual lock on there. So our ESC is going to measure out to about 4 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got that dual lock pretty much cut up. What we're going to do is place this dual lock on the ESC. And now what we're going to do is trim this dual lock. Do be careful if you're cutting. Cut away from you if you don't know how to cut. Because if that was coming towards me, it would have stabbed me. So keep that in mind if you are doing this. Cut away from you. Same thing on this back side. I'm going to cut that off. So we're not going to be using this sense wire. So let's get that out of the way. It looks like there is bolt holes, maybe for the Xlx2, but what I'm going to do is use this dual lock. Just take that backing off. And we want to make sure we don't hit our steering servo wire, so let's pull it off to this side. And press firmly. Put your hand underneath. Press firmly, make sure that's stuck on there. Pretty firm. Next, what we're going to do is plug our wiring back in. We don't need this back half, so let's just trim that off. And this stuff is extremely sticky, so be careful. So here we have a reduced wire for our Xlx2. If this was our stock wiring, we'll have a mile of wire we have to hide. So this is one way to tidy up your wiring. So our wire is going to go down on the side, go into the box, and then that's about as much wire as we're going to have exposed. Next I'll show you on soldering the Xlx2 to QS8 connectors. You do want to have as much wire as you can on your ESC versus your battery. These are going to be the connectors we'll be soldering on, which is QS8. So you're going to have your positive on one side and your negative on one side. It's going to have a 5.1 ohm resistor, so when you go to plug these in, you don't get a sparking. So I'll show you next on how to solder in these connectors.